This is the Mooncast.
See you, Space Cowboy.
Welcome to the Mooncast, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, it's a nice being on Mooncast, bro. And it's nice meeting you as well. I mean, you go by the name Moonboy, right?
Exactly. Everybody calls me Moon Boy, and coined that name now, and I just ran with it. I think it all kind of started if I really take it back to when my teacher told me I couldn't be an astronaut because of my skin color, and it's now evolved into financial expertise, fintech expertise, really from everything from Web3 technology to finance, and I've dropped a lot of really great content, and trying to give people a different angle and viewpoint on things that I think they may not be looking at, different perspectives and etc. So yeah, I try to be that guiding voice within this Web3 space. Obviously there's Bitcoin, which is what we're here to talk about, but then you also have people trying to decentralize other types of aspects, whereas it's two separate things, which is why I want to get into with you, which one fixes the money while the other tries to enhance financial and business practices that are happening currently right now. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about you, and just tell me a little bit about your background and why you got into getting into Bitcoin. How did your journey start, and where are you at currently right now, and what you're working on?
Wow, thank you, Moonboy. And it's nice being on Mooncast today. I'm Heritage Falodun, popularly known as Very Big on all social media platforms. I'm a software developer and a tech person in terms of trade, but talking about my journey, I'm presently the co-founder and CEO of DigiOats, a Bitcoin education and liquidity provision platform, as well as founder of few other tech startups focused on remittance, uh, Neona Synergy, also a board member on Cashwire, which is focused also on remittance powered by Bitcoin infrastructure, specifically for Africa. At my layer time, I write for Bitcoin Magazine. I'm presently a contributing writer for Bitcoin Magazine. And right since 2021, I've been a Bitcoin correspondent for Black Bitcoin Billionaire, a Bitcoin book called Community Initiatives in the United States as well. And I'm presently the host of Bitcoin in Nigeria media program as well, a program focused on getting Bitcoin insights and information across to people on site here in Nigeria and in Africa at large. Um, Over the past few years, I've transitioned fully into Bitcoin, specifically because of the intrinsic value of the technology and what it tends to offer us here in Africa and the global south at large. I started my journey as a C++ developer. I was building products with a lot of software companies like 115 Garage and Planet Nest. Then I stumbled on blockchain. I only stumbled on blockchain specifically on the trading aspect. I was curious about finance. Then I started using some trading apps then. And during the course of that time, I think I was scammed. I got freelance job with some NFT companies as well. NFT Boss.feed, that's the name of the company as at then. My experience being scammed on Ethereum when trading made me more curious about blockchain, and then trying to find out what's actually the underlying technology and the mechanism of operation um, for this space. And then that was when I met Black Bitcoin Billionaire, joined the community, insight from moderators from that community helping to shape in my path into Bitcoin. I ended up realizing that Bitcoin is actually the core technology behind the crypto space. Most of the crypto and Web3 infrastructures are more like um, building and developing based on what their founders or probably the tech itself has been able to gain from Bitcoin as a decentralized network. Then I moved fully into Bitcoin by making sure people don't go through the hard way the way I went through, just beating around the bush before understanding the technology. Hence, the reason behind creating DigiOats and the need to also solve relevant problem in Africa, judging from the fact that I'm from Nigeria, where a lot of issues are happening in terms of relevance and delays for businesses focused on importing and exporting. So I feel it's right time to create solutions to solve those problems. Hence, the introduction of Nuna Synergy and Cashwire with my friend who happens to be the CEO of Cashwire right now. So that's just a quick run through um, about my works and everything I'm doing right now. And I feel information should also be available for everyone, not just in Africa alone, should be available for everyone in the West and the world at large. So I feel contributing my quota to giving insight about what is happening in Africa to mainstream media is important as well. Hence my participation and contribution to Bitcoin Magazine, NASDAQ, and a lot of major blockchain and crypto focused uh, platforms. Thank you, Moonboy.
Yeah,
That's my
yeah.
response, man.
It's an amazing journey, an amazing intro from an amazing person, man. And the space needs people like you, to also, like I said, give that African perspective, because a lot of times the propaganda and etc. that's happening outside of Africa, doesn't really look into Africa, when Africa is kind of fueling and empowering the entire world currently right now. So I wanted to basically shift over to talk a little bit more about. I want to address some of the sort of disputes and I guess like objections that people have when it comes to Bitcoin. And people have a ton of objections, right? So this podcast, that I want to just kind of address all of them, from someone like you, get your expertise and your opinion on what you think about, some of these objections. One of them being about the volatility. So as we all know, Bitcoin, tends to fluctuate in price, but people who are true Bitcoiners understand what that actually means. And I was wondering if you could just break that down to the audience to let them understand, is Bitcoin too volatile of an asset to hold? And is there better alternative assets to hold outside of that have a little bit better volatility index? And can you just break down the entire volatility aspect of Bitcoin?
Yeah, thank you. That's actually a very, very good question. I'm going to approach the question in two ways. One, I'm going to say Bitcoin volatility itself is a reflection of fiat incompetency. It's a reflection of the um, problems and issues available in the traditional finance. Bitcoin is Bitcoin. One Bitcoin equals to one Bitcoin, right? But when you pair this currency with the um, archaic and eclectic currencies all around, you tend to now see the weakness and reflection of incompetency of those currencies on Bitcoin. Since Satoshi created Bitcoin, one Bitcoin is equivalent to one Bitcoin. But the volatility comes when we start pairing it with Naira, when we start pairing it with Kenya shillings, United States dollars, and all. The volatility in Bitcoin is a reflection of decrease in purchasing power over time on all fiat currencies. So, talking about the asset aspect and then talking about people who are willing to leverage this currency as an investment in comparison with their currencies or stocks or whatever they are doing. We are going to be talking and recording based on facts because factual responses are actually like the best thing you can give. Looking at S&P, looking at all other assets, be it real estate over time, you tend to compare the period of a decade or about 13 years ago, the return on investment of on those assets in comparison to Bitcoin is actually it's crystal clear and obvious. Bitcoin is the best appreciating asset over time, and that alone is enough to tell us that its consensus mechanism operates in such a way that it enables scarcity, and its volatility is just a mirage. When you leverage the concept of time and patience, you understand that Bitcoin itself is being developed and embedded to remain appreciative over time. So volatility is just a mirage, and it's just a reflection of fiat incompetency when you are pairing Bitcoin with other currencies. So I feel this must have been able to give response to your question a bit, but I'm willing to elaborate more depending on the next question. Thank you, Momo.
Did you know that smart contract developers make around $120,000 per year? We are building the biggest Web3 talent pool in Africa, linking you to companies looking to outsource cheaper labor. Find out and join us at helico.xyz. And as always, see you, Space Cowboy.
Yeah, yeah. What would you say to people who try to look at the asset in the short term? Do you think that they should be looking at the asset at all in the short term?
Well, I always say people tend to like indulge or use Bitcoin in the way it solves their problem or in the way they actually want to leverage the technology. Bitcoin itself is voracious. And when you are leveraging Bitcoin for short-term gains, that's actually a very a high risk thing to do as far as Bitcoin is concerned. And my advice as a Bitcoiner to such people would be Bitcoin is not a get rich quick scheme. Rather, it's more like a tool to solve problems that are being created by the existing financial terrain or the existing existing issues we have in finance. So you should look at it from a perspective of long term rather than a perspective of short term. And my advice and response to your question regarding people leveraging it as short term is if they are willing to like abort the risks involved in that type of decision making metrics, then they should go for it. If they are not, the best way to leverage and the best way to like opt for this innovation, the technology, the currency itself is to actually think long term and abolish the concept of fiat gains. When you abolish the concept of fiat gains and focus on the concept of fat accumulation over time, or probably thinking in the concept of having your unit of account denominated in Bitcoin over time, then you'll see the short-term mindset of fiat gains will not be there. And if at all you want to like leverage for fiat gains, then be thinking of a long-term concept whereby the reflection of inflation, the reflection of decrease in purchasing power will end up giving you the required profit you have, because we know all currencies right now keeps depreciating over time. It's just like the depreciation is better on each currency than the other depending on the jurisdiction controlling such currency. So it revolves back to central banking and interest of individual in utilizing Bitcoin to solve whatever problem they really want it for.
Yeah, yeah, is a great response for that. And moving on, what about the energy consumption concerns that people tend to have and say it's not environmentally friendly? What would your
Yeah,
thoughts be on that?
very great question. I think I always give response to this question to in sum of previous sections that will add with some speaker as well. I always say ignorance is Bitcoin's greatest enemy. A lot of critics, people who criticize this technology, doesn't even take their time to study it. When you take your time to study it, you get a lot of insight and information from it. Over 55% source of energy powering Bitcoin mining is renewable. Bitcoin mining and Bitcoin operation itself is making the world greener than causing havoc. What do I mean by that? I think I'm going to cite an example. Elon Musk said when Bitcoin becomes green or the mining strength, proof of work mining strength, it's above 50%, then Tesla will start accepting Bitcoin payment again. According to the ESG metrics and information from sustainable um, Bitcoin mining protocols. I think Daniel Barton raised a point about that. Bitcoin mining and energy critics must be able to understand that the mining strength, the resources put into mining Bitcoin now is strictly powered by renewable energy. And powering such innovation with renewable energy means it's friendly, means it's helpful for the world at large, means energy that should have been wasted or probably causing havoc to the climate or human itself is being used judiciously to mine sound money. So the issue around energy, the issue around inefficiency is out of it. It's just a matter of studying and understanding that these things are actually more of benefit to us than causing havoc. So over 55% Bitcoin mining strength and energy structure is being powered by renewable energy. So that's a response to that question. And that's a response to counter every defamatory opinion from any Bitcoin critic. Thank you, Mumbo.
Yeah, when people talk about energy consumption, I always laugh and say, what about the entire financial banking system or video games or Christmas lights in the U.S. and in the West alone? No one ever wants to talk about that and have that kind of discussion. So yeah, great points, great breakdown on that too as well. And moving on, I wanted to ask you about the centralization aspect because some argue that Bitcoin it's not truly decentralized due to like the concentration of the mining power. And I don't know what your perspective is on that. As you know, the mining power is kind of concentrated more so where a few own majority of the mining power. And how would you, what's your retort to that?
Yeah, in terms of the question around decentralization or centralization, aside the mining alone, I will respond by indulging the consensus mechanism that Bitcoin itself operates on. It's proof of work. And these critics come in with centralized concepts and all actually guys working on blockchains that are majorly dependent on proof of stake, proof of activity, and all. When you think about that, you see how ridiculous it is that centralization is obvious in those projects as for Bitcoin running from its operating mechanism, which is proof of work that says you must actually burn energy, you must show interest in, you must show an act of putting in work to actually recreate new Bitcoin. Looking at the technical aspect, you notice that it's open source and it's more like a collection of work from multiple developers. Now let's go to the mining aspect, the major point of your question that says, oh, it looks like the mining is concentrated in some region. We're going to take China, for example. When China banned Bitcoin, people were like, oh, it's going to affect the network because majority of the miners are in China. But then these same miners move to countries that are friendly for them. I can list countries where we have Bitcoin mining operations going on. The the question about centralization as far as mining is concerned is no basis because there's intense mining operation in El Salvador powered by volcanoes. There's intense mining operation in Russia. There's intense mining operation in Kazakhstan. There's intense mining operation in Ethiopia. There's mining operation in Nigeria, even if it's not intense yet, but Nigeria has the capability to also offer intense mining operation. Aside the United States, I mean, you notice the countries I mentioned. I didn't mention United States because there's intense mining operation in United States, but this is to tell everyone that aside the United States, there's also mining operation in other regions. And if United States decides to shut down mining operation in United States, then other regions will take huge chunk of this mining operation and see it happening as opportunity because we have regions where electricity are cheaper, regions like Ethiopia, Kenya, Nigeria, where Bitcoin is being mined with renewable energy sources. I mean, I won't cease to mention names like the likes of Gridless, the likes of Trojan mining. I know it's obvious. We know Mara in US. We know Hot 8 and stuff. So my response to your question in general is that Bitcoin mining itself is decentralized. It's going on in different regions, and the question about high concentration in a particular region is a baseless argument because looking at the statistics, the mining operation process is strictly decentralized. It's spread across different countries in the world. And I feel the West will be shocked, or these critics will be shocked sooner than later when they realize that Africa is taking huge steps into mining Bitcoin with hydro, solar, clear gases, and all of that. And I feel countries like oil producing countries like Nigeria will be so helpful in that over the long run. Ethiopia, we see Ethiopia mining Bitcoin very well as well. So that's my response to your question, Mundo.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. That's great. And also because when you think about the centralization aspect too as well, I think I read something recently, a statistic, maybe you can confirm it. It was like a few percent of, I haven't checked on chain yet, but it's like a few percent of people or wallet addresses own around 90 or so percent of all the Bitcoin. How do you think, for the people that have objections on Bitcoin, how do you think that will affect Bitcoin moving forward as we try to, gear towards a hyper Bitcoinization state or try to switch into a Bitcoin standard? If at the end of the day, would you say that the concentration of wealth will be with a very, very few amount of people, same as the fiat system? Because that's some people's argument. How do you kind of see the landscape of liquidity moving forward?
Wow, my response to that is everyone will actually get to understand or acquire Bitcoin at the time they deserve it. And one response in regards to like, oh, the accumulation strategy and all, it's probably the wealth concentration is going back to the folks who has high liquidity and all of that. When you share some statistics around Bitcoin utility and accumulation metrics. The utility itself is very high in the global south and Africa. The accumulation is high in the west. Reason is these people interface and reflect to Bitcoin based on what they feel Bitcoin can offer them. In Africa, in the global south, we have an eclectic payment rails, we have inflation, we have a lot of ridiculous restrictions around remittance. Bitcoin is interfacing to Africa and the global south more as medium of exchange, although we have people using it as store of value to actually build generational wealth. But in the West, the interface with this technology more as store of value and a way of building generational wealth than leveraging it as medium of exchange. So someone in Africa is more like a day-to-day use, running his trade using Bitcoin and probably other stable coins and all. The question about liquidity and wealth accumulation, I think I answered it first by saying everyone will acquire Bitcoin at the time they deserve it. Just as we are going to say, people tend to interface with the internet first. People tend to interface with the innovation around electricity first. Does that mean everyone will not have access to electricity or internet over the long run? No, everyone will have access to it, but you might just be more privileged based on your jurisdiction or based on the fact that you have access to information faster than the other. You have access to like infrastructure that needs that information for you. So I don't see anything bad in terms of shift when it comes to like accumulation or holding. Just the way we have people accumulation strength in the West, we also have people accumulation strength in Africa and other continents. So I feel over long time, we are going to move towards hyper Bitcoinization, and people tend to have the information first will be favored, will be favored. But it's not going to be as ridiculous as it is with the fiat system, whereby the amount of stake you have, you can easily control the consensus mechanism with it. With Bitcoin, it's not proof of stakes. Even if you have more coins than Satoshi himself during the Genesis block stuff and all of that, you won't still be able to make decisions on the network if you are not running a node or probably mining and all of that. So it's strictly decentralized system, and your liquidity doesn't dictate your control on this network. So irrespective of what you have, I think the mighty laws of this world can only make influence based on demand and supply, but can make influence on the network in terms of changing the operating mechanism. So Bitcoin is quite evenly distributed. So no doubt about that. Moonboy, that's my
Yeah.
response.
Yeah, I appreciate that response. I also I some people too as well give me objections, and they say that okay, well at the end of the day the person with the highest amount of liquidity kind of runs everything, but it's like, well, that person still needs goods and services. So if they were put on a Bitcoin standard, then and if everyone was on a Bitcoin standard, then whoever is able to give him goods or services or investment opportunities or whatever, he would then take that, he would swap whatever that uniformly agreed upon medium of exchange, in this case Bitcoin, for that good or service or that investment opportunity, and it would circulate around freely. And in this time, in this case, it's fixed amount of something, so you can't make more of it. So whereas the current model that we have right now, they just keep making more of it, and we still have a limited supply of goods and services. So it's like getting us kind of nowhere. But I did want to ask you too as well. Do you think that a credit layer needs to be built on top of Bitcoin? I'm not talking about credit expansion, but I'm talking more about a credit layer so people can borrow land. Do you think that does need to get built on top of Bitcoin at some point, just for adequacies of economies and so on, for people who don't have liquidity, and how do you view that?
I think you were in the matrix, but then if I get your question perfectly, you're asking about building credit layer on Bitcoin and probably borrowing against your Bitcoin and all of that. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, correct.
Um, cool. I think this is where preference comes in. It's actually a concept of utility itself. It's a concept of scalability, which I won't go against. It's something that is much like a welcome development. That's a section of utility that I feel we should also explore, and I feel some products are even exploring already. For instance, let me be elaborate about this concept of utility and go back to your question about building a credit layer on Bitcoin. One, Bitcoin itself is a currency, it's a commodity, it's an asset, it's a technology, it's an innovation on its own. And thinking about it, we now have different layers that are coming to add more utility to this technology itself. We have layers like Lightning coming with instant payments, minute payments, and all of that. So when we have layers, products, or infrastructures that enables you to lend against your Bitcoin or that give you a bit of more credit layer as far as Bitcoin is concerned. I feel it's a utility that will work for people depending on where they find themselves. For instance, in the third world countries, there are situations whereby you might need emergency funds, and if you're someone who is also more like indulging the innovation for a long-term investment and all, we tend to see that like a conflict of decision because you actually want to spend and you want to save simultaneously. So the concept of having a credit layer will be useful in that scenario. And I feel it's a welcome development. It's something I believe it's going to also shape in Bitcoin and add more utility to the innovation itself.
Imagine 10xing your earnings capacity to 100K per year while working remotely at the comfort of your own home. We are in the exponential growth phase of technological advancements. That means AI, AR, VR, robotics, and of course, Web3 technologies taking over the job market. At HeliCode Academy, we train students on Web3 hard skills and link them to employment in the job market. Find out more at helicode.xyz. And as always, see you, Space Cowboy.
Yeah, makes sense. You mentioned something about the scalability, which brings me to the technical objections that some people have when discussing about Bitcoin. So, what is your thoughts on scalability? Some people would say that, obviously we know we have layer two, but from your perspective, at layer one, obviously we know it's not scalable. It gets slow, it gets expensive and costly, and etc. So what is your thoughts on layer two development in terms of like the Lightning Network and so on and so forth? How do you see layer two development, and also how can the layer two, how can you move the value from layer one to layer two, and then at the simultaneously also create that great user experience for the end user?
Uh, that's actually a very, very great question. To make Bitcoin scalable, we need to keep developing and adding consistent updates to the network, to the innovation itself. That's why you see consistent developer input on different VIPs, that's like Bitcoin improvement proposals and all. And talking about layer two, we have the liquid network, we have Stack, we have Lightning, we have Taproot, we have a lot of layer two solutions dependent on Bitcoin, which are trying to solve one problem or the other or add more features to this network without tampering with the consensus mechanism and the blockchain itself. So my feeling about layer two is it's quite needed and it's important in scaling Bitcoin as a technology. And one thing we need to understand that the layer two solution is layer two solutions always trade off one or two things to actually achieve their goals. What do I mean by that? In Lightning, Lightning is trading off self custody to achieve instant transactions, right? And when you look at stuff like, let's say, segregated witness and all, is trading off memory space to achieve more like a corporate operation and account management in Bitcoin and all. Where you have a lot of things coming in. So when we are talking about different improvement proposals and layer two solutions, these solutions is just based on skills of preference. These solutions are needed to like target and focus on solving specific problems. A example of that is Lightning. I will always refer to Lightning because it's very efficient in Africa and we use it always. In comparison with Ethereum, where you tend to buy one apple and pay a gas fee with two apples. In Bitcoin blockchain, when you buy one apple, you're probably going to be paying a network fee of quarter apple on the main blockchain, which most of us find quite expensive, right? But with Lightning, you can easily buy 1/10 of an apple and then pay no gas fee and anything. But then your coin or payments you are making through Lightning is actually out of your code wallet. It's actually out of it's actually out of your control. It's more like you are now in the market, so you are trading off security, you're trading off privacy in the Lightning Network aspect, right? You're trading it up for instant reflection, unlike how private and secure you are on the main blockchain, where you are trading off instant reflection or fees in terms of transaction method. So layer two solutions will be more elaborate as far as utility is concerned. Layer two solutions will be more specific towards addressing certain problems than than just than just focusing more on the solutions that the core blockchain itself offers. So that's just going to be my response to your question, Moonboy. Layer two solutions are extremely welcomed so far they remain decentralized and not being controlled because all the layer two solutions I mentioned, like Lightning, is still decentralized because we rightly use a concept of onions and payment channels and all of that. So yeah, I think that's my response, Mumbo.
Yeah, it's very interesting. When I look at Lightning, I don't see it as something as decentralized as Bitcoin because correct me if I'm wrong on the technicalities, but you're taking your value, you're moving it into a layer two payment network, but you're either renting out somebody's node or you're creating your own node to be able to create a Lightning payment channel. And then someone else is creating their own Lightning payment channel, and then you're transacting one another. Then when you close the transaction, you close it off at the layer one to execute the transaction, right? Do I have that correct?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
So for me, wouldn't that then take away a little bit of the security aspect of Bitcoin itself? It is decentralized, but to what degree is it decentralized? It's not as purely decentralized as Bitcoin, correct? The layer one, I'm meaning.
Yeah. Not as purely decentralized as the layer one because the settlement layer is actually the layer one. Whatever minute transactions you are making on Lightning is just routing throughout different payment channels and then ending up being settled on the first layer itself. As much as you can say, I would say the core blockchain itself is extremely decentralized. Why Lightning is still decentralized than all other shitcoins, and but then it's not as decentralized as the core blockchain. I think I resonate with your opinion on that.
Yeah, okay. And also, if someone listening to this right now and they would like to, because they're living maybe more in the global south where the fees are quite high, $3, $4, $5 for fees is $10 for fees is quite high. If you're living in a Nigeria, in a Kenya, in a Lebanon, in a Venezuela. So I want to know, how would you advise somebody to get into layer two Lightning Network? What wallets would they be able to use that are secure? The seed phrase is obviously involved. If you could just break that down a little bit quickly for somebody who's trying to get into layer two as an alternative and wants to save their capital, but doesn't have, anything more than 5,000 Naira, and it's not that much that you can really use and leverage on layer one. So yeah.
Yeah, so when it comes to like the layer one solutions, like I mean, the core blockchain itself, the utility around it. I mean, I always recommend people to use the code wallets, and the code wallets are I'm well cognizant of that I can easily vouch for are Trezor code wallet and Blockstream Gate code wallets. You can also use Bitbox. But then when it comes to ledger, I think I won't recommend ledger because of the lot of inclusion of smart contract, um, different blockchains on ledger. It makes it vulnerable. And when it comes to like using utility as far as the second layer is concerned, there are two lightning and a lot of all these stuff around liquid and all of that. I'm going to say the best stores that works in Africa and the global south are a lot of products that enable this feature. One of those products is BitNob. One of those products is Cashwire. These are mobile applications you can download and easily swap your vendor. You can easily make quick and instant payment, just like the Shivo wallet works in El Salvador. Blink wallet, previously Bitcoin Beach wallet, works well in Africa. Cashwire works well in Africa. It works well in Kenya, Tanzania, Nigeria. And just like the existing M-Pesa, Tigo Pesa people use, Momo and all of that, these applications works and they enables you to use the layer two solutions on Bitcoin. We also have Candle, and we also have Mavaki, a couple of products like this, and these products are widely used in Africa when you are interfacing with Bitcoin layer two and all of that. There's side swaps as well, side swaps for liquid, shift, AI, and all of that. So I mean, there are pretty much products available. There's IKBTC. These products work together hand in hand for you to like use Lightning. You can even use Lightning on Binance with these products. They are quite compatible, and you can use the product with any Lightning compatible product as well. So I feel I've been able to like at least do a bit of ads for few products right now. So if you are listening to us, you want to use Lightning in the global south, you want to use Lightning in Africa, then you should be thinking of Blink Wallet, you should be thinking of Cashwire, you should be thinking of BitNob, you should be thinking of Pandu and Mavaki.
Awesome. I'm going to reach out to you to get links for all of those. So I could put those in the show notes too, as well, for those newbies that are trying to get in, maybe want to save some money, but they only have like $1 or $2 and they don't have a lot of money. So they still want to be able to save in Bitcoin and preserve their purchasing power long term, whatever it is that they're making from their payment, from their check. Because, $5-10 in Nigeria is much more than it is in the global north, where that doesn't even buy you McDonald's anymore. It's just like yeah.
Exactly.
So I wanted to shift over too as well, to because we've covered now the scalability, we've covered now a bit of the security, but some people would say that there's potential vulnerabilities that could happen with Bitcoin. Can you just quickly just debunk, like, if there is a possible way to debunk, or how you would be able to attack Bitcoin if there is a way to attack it?
To me,
Yeah.
the Bitcoin maximalist, I always tell people to study and understand the innovation. I 51% attack or something. I'm going to say itself, Bitcoin core itself is not vulnerable because if it's vulnerable, it would have been hacked. Bitcoin core has 99.9% efficiency over time since inception. It's not like a blockchain that's going to stop working like Solana. It's not like a blockchain that's going to stop working like Toncoin
Yeah.
blockchain that goes down for this and all of that. It's not like these blockchains that are being controlled by the founders and all. Bitcoin core blockchain itself is an innovation and technology that is solving the problem created by the traditional finance system, unlike blockchains operating like companies or or products aimed at making profit over time. Bitcoin is actually a network and innovation available to be explored for advancement of finance in general. That's just going to be my response to that. And I mean, if there are responses probably over time from listeners listening to this podcast, they can direct their questions to you and I'm going to respond. They can also direct their questions to me on LinkedIn, Heritage Falodun. They can direct their questions to me on Twitter at Eric Eagle. And then I mean, those are like uh, major serious social platforms that I'm always on. So that's going to be my response in terms of vulnerability. I mean, Bitcoin has not been hacked, then that's enough response to say this technology itself is secure and strictly decentralized and not vulnerable to like intrusion from third parties.
What would you say in regards to quantum computing? I don't know if you're familiar with that new technology that's coming, and some people would combat and say, well, who cares if quantum computing comes and they're going to be able to get enough computational power to overtake the network anyways.
Um, I've seen arguments around that. I think all those arguments are just assumption, and we understand that how strong quantum computing is. We also understand how strong encryption is. I think the cypherpunks who notice the importance of encryption, they notice that there will also be advancement in technology and all. Let's see if quantum computing can be able to demystify the myths around Bitcoin. Until then, all responses regarding quantum computing remains assumption and it's not what's it called? No valuable facts to prove Bitcoin being subjective to attacks. So that's just going to be my response, man. And I feel there have been issues about quantum computing, specifically in regards to Bitcoin, in regards to like making it being able to pull out the 51% attack and all of that. But let's see how it goes. It, I feel it doesn't work that way actually.
Yeah, in my head, I always think that, well, worst case scenario, you can just do a hard fork, right? That's like very, very worst case scenario. You do a hard fork, upgrade the code, and we move on with life. That would probably be the one solution. Another thing too, as well, is there's not enough computational power or chips to go around, so there's a lack of that to be able to have and create that sort of capacity to do that on a scale. With quantum computing, it takes a
Exactly.
lot of chips. Yeah. So.
Provided the entire dev and the community, like the runner validates that decision, then we should be able to like move on with that. So I always say these things are just assumption until we see it happening, then there will always be a solution and way around it. Technology keeps advancing and we innovations we always find its way around inventions, Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned one thing too. I just want to revert back to one thing that you mentioned about the light wallets for layer two scaling solutions, Lightning Network and so on. Is there a way to maybe link those software wallets to a hardware device so that you can have a little bit extra two-factor authentication security, whether that's a Ledger, Trezor, Bitbox, etc. Is there a way to link those software wallets to the hardware wallet, or are you just kind of just having have all your value on the smartphone? Let me know.
As far as I'm concerned, the linking those software wallets uh, with hardware, I will say no, but I know there is Trezor Safe Theory. Trezor also has an interface that enables you to like interact with the hardware wallet. They have a software interface and all of that. But I feel in order to not trade off security for utility, that particular function seems not to exist on most of the products. So it's more like focusing more on the specific utility, which is instant transaction, than focusing on connecting those products with hardware wallet, which has a different utility, which is security. So to
Yeah.
not just trade off exposure and enable vulnerability on those devices, I feel we've not seen a lot of that feature. No, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, my thing is kind of how I view it is the hardware wallet is more like the savings account, and the layer two solution is like the checkings account. And so that's kind of how I view it. So you kind of want to keep most of your value in the
Yeah,
savings
nice
account.
explanation. I mean, it's pretty clear to a layman. Nice explanation. So your code wallet is basically to hold your phone, and your software wallet or probably all these Lightning layer two wallets is to just suspend your funds and use it probably when you are in the store and in the market.
Stay tuned for part two, and as always, see you, Space Cowboy.